name's Tom Benninger, and I'm here to talk to you about DevOps and movies. But what I'm really here to talk to you about are the cultural touchstones we use when we tell stories about DevOps to each other. I'm a systems engineer at Red Hat, and I work on promoting DevOps practices within the enterprise. I'm also the type of person who says things like a cinematic metaphor unironically, but other than that, I have no qualifications to give this talk. About a year ago, I was attending DevOpsDays Raleigh 2017 here in the Community Center, and I noticed that Star Wars was coming up a lot. In fact, of the 8 main presentations over the 2 days, 6 of them referenced Star Wars. And that got me thinking, what does this say about our community that we reference Star Wars so much? And what does it say that this year no one's mentioned it yet? So that's interesting. In fact, of those 6 presentations that referenced Star Wars, one of them was entirely Star Wars themed. Every slide from end to end was a Star Wars reference. And a speaker of another presentation mentioned that he had added a slide to reference Star Wars to fit in better. So why? Let's look at what this means. Well, to do that, we need to look at what Star Wars is. Okay, so what does this say about our community? I'm going to go ahead and skip down. Star Wars is the fantasy of nerds in the 70s and 80s, based off of the fantasy of nerds in the 50s and 60s, which are heavily influenced by war movies. Each movie is a technical achievement, and they're now cultural bedrock, but they're not consistently great movies. The average rating of a Star Wars film is only so-so. I don't like to watch movies that get below 80 on a Rotten Tomato meter. And this isn't about The Last Jedi, that's a perfectly good film. There are some specific issues I have with Star Wars. The first is that life is not a zero-sum game. It's not the Empire versus the Rebellion, only one can win. It's not about binary thinking. It's not do or do not. Like, no, try, really. Give me your best. And I've never been in a war. I don't think of wars as my native environment. I also don't like the mystical elitism. I don't want a magical hero with a light sword to come in and save the day. I want to work with my peers to make good solutions. Also, it's a little bit racist in places. So can we do better? I think we can. And what I'm going to do is walk you through 3 movies that I think espouse DevOps principles better than Star Wars. The first is 2016's Arrival. In The Arrival, we see scary aliens have come to Earth, and people and organizations need to figure out how to react to change. This movie has a lot of conflict in it. I don't mean a lot of fights, I mean a lot of different groups who are conflicting with each other. Just like the conflict between Dev and Ops, we have space invaders versus Earthlings, we have language nerds versus math nerds, we have the US versus China. But when you zoom out of these conflicts, what you find is really opportunities for different groups to work together. And in order to do that, you have to learn how to communicate. Whether you speak English or math or weird circles, being able to talk to each other is the first step to collaborating on better solutions. Now, everything doesn't always go right, which is why my next recommendation is Rashomon, an Akira Kurosawa classic. In this movie, a wandering priest finds the scene of a murder and has to interview people to try and figure out what happens. Here's what happens, he doesn't figure it out. Spoilers. But in talking to everyone at the scene, he finds that everyone has their own unique perspective on what really happened. The bandit considers himself a noble warrior, everyone else considers himself a madman. And that perspective can be confusing, and what it really shows you is that things don't always make sense, but you've got to learn to adapt and live with that, which is an important message in today's world, I think. When things don't make sense, when things are not going well, you can watch my favorite movie, which is Chef. An executive chef gets fired and has to go on a road trip to discover his true purpose in life. It's a much more uplifting movie than the last 2, but what it really teaches you is that you need to find something that you love to do and do that. You need to own your career and not lock yourself into a bad job because you're telling yourself it's the best thing for you to be doing. I've made this mistake repeatedly in my career, and you'll be much happier if you find something you love doing. So, you can reach me on Twitter @TomDen. Please send your rebuttals and movie recommendations and everything else to the hashtag, and hopefully we can get a nice little community talk going. Thanks.